Welcome back to His Fire for Me. Today is another Frugal Friday, and we're going to be reading from the Heart of Frugal Hedonism. This is my wife, Kim.
Hi.
And she's going to be reading for us. What do we got today?
We are on Chapter 6 of The Art of Frugal Hedonism by Annie Razor Rowland with Adam Grubb. And Chapter 6 is titled Recalibrate Your Senses. We humans have embarrassingly fickle brains. And tongues, and ears, and eyes, and noses. Avoid sugar for a week, and suddenly the juicy explosion of a ripe peach is transformed into the most gorgeous ambrosia your taste buds could imagine. Don't watch TV for a month, and disappearing into a book soon becomes the most captivating escapism conceivable. Recalibrate is an incredibly useful word for the frugal hedonist, particularly because all of us have, at one time or another, experienced shifts in what we perceive as pleasurable. Maybe it was that time that you had a dodgy stomach and had to live on dry crackers for far too many days, then couldn't believe how good a bowl of minestrone tasted afterwards, and found yourself happily eating more simply for a while to follow. Maybe it was that time that the power went out for several hours and then the lights seemed too bright and the stereo seemed too loud when they came back on, and you decided to only leave one lamp switched on for the rest of the evening. The element of restriction in such scenarios undoubtedly boosts their reset effect. Adopting a consumption rhythm of lean, lavish, lean certainly intensifies pleasure. But it is not restriction that lies at the heart of this effect. It is contrast. And there's no reason why the activities that provide the contrast can't be enjoyable in themselves. Think of that time you went for an amazing walk up a mountain, and the sandwich you ate when you reached the top struck you as the most satisfying thing you had ever eaten. An icy cold beer with a friend tastes about 4 times as good after a gratifyingly sweaty day of working in the garden together. Watching a cheesy sitcom might seem dreary if you do it all the time, but after an engrossing stint going hard at some complex mental work, it can seem like wonderful primary colored surrealism. Bathing regularly with hot water and soap can feel like a task as much as a luxurious experience, yet after 6 days of making exhilarating dashes into a chilly river while camping, that shower takes on the status of a steamy Shangri-La. Once we notice how easily such effects can occur, it only follows that we might think of exploiting them by design rather than by accident. What a brilliant little mechanism this is. You could experiment with recalibrating what counts as a treat or outing. Pretend you're on wartime rations and eat only the humblest of home cooking for a week. You'll want to plan your meals and maybe do an initial shop for ingredients. Then make a date to go out for ice cream during this period. That excursion is magically transformed into an enormous treat. You put on your best summer ensemble to do it and linger over every lick, drawing the whole event out for as long as possible. Imagine being so delicately calibrated that a cucumber could be your favorite food. The Red Tent by Anita Diamant is a fictionalized biography of Dinah, Jacob's only daughter in the book of Genesis. At one point, Dinah finds herself in the heat of Egypt, far from her Mesopotamian home. I was fed amazing foods, melons with orange flesh and melons with pink flesh, and there were always dates in abundance. But best of all were the cucumbers, the most delicious food I could imagine, green and sweet. Even in the heat of the sun, a cucumber kissed the tongue with the cool of the moon. Once your tongue has achieved cucumber enlightenment, why not try resetting your relationship with technology? You could try a self-imposed ban on all information and entertainment technology for 48 hours. Be warned, many people who do this are profoundly shocked by how much extra time the day suddenly seems to contain. When you do open that laptop again, you might find that you are satisfied by the thrilling omniscience of just discovering what the weather will be tomorrow. Annie once made herself the guinea pig for an experiment in using no electronic technologies and no artificial light for a fortnight. She was amazed by how sensitive she became to the atmospherics of natural light by the end of it. The twinkles, glistens, sheens, and glows of sunlight in its various applications became deep, textural elements of each day. We can also press reset on our expectation buttons. If you expect to buy takeaway for your midday meal every day, you may be calibrated to feel that lunch is only worth looking forward to if it comes from a shop. Expect instead to always bring a packed lunch, and you'll gradually forget about the greasy displays in the shop windows and will look forward to tucking into your roast dinner leftovers lunchbox enormously. Exploiting this generous agility of your body and mind is exactly what frugal hedonists do on a lifelong basis. Just as the dedicated debauchee is renowned for seeking out increasingly depraved experiences to satisfy an ever more demanding appetite, frequently making frugal choices furnishes us with a more sensitive pleasure palate. The basic blueprint for modern first-world living is normalized hyperabundance and hyperstimulation, punctuated by desperate attempts at escape when the fallout becomes too distressing. These attempts usually take the form of bouts of restraint, like diets, or of collapse, like illness, or lie by a pool for 2 weeks getting drunk holidays. Frugal hedonism inverts this pattern by normalizing an elegant sufficiency of consumption, and then artfully dotting it with intensely relished abundance. It takes advantage of the different flavors of different modes of being and sets them against each other to extract more enjoyment from each. Obviously, the suggestions we've made so far are for quite small fry recalibrations, although you may be surprised by the ripple effects. If you're hungry for something grander, why not try recalibrating your fundamental concept of middle? You could kick off with a little learning binge about people who deliberately live at extremes of the low spending spectrum, such as those who travel without money or eat freegan style. Freegan, a note, is a person who bases their diet around utilizing otherwise unvalued food, usually motivated by a desire to reduce environmental impact. This may include rescuing superficially damaged food from dumpsters, harvesting from ignored fruit trees, wild foraging, and passing surplus produce around between friends.
Okay.
Perhaps watch some documentaries that look at the lifestyles and resource use expectations of your average modern shantytown dweller. Delve into the lives of some icons of history whose definitions of convenience and comfort were inevitably more forgiving than those of their modern counterparts. Look at some of the stuff that kids get excited about and question whether your capacity for noticing the impressive in things has become blinkered with age. Making these kind of mental forays now and again can be an invigorating reality check and a refreshing counterbalance to whatever exposure you're getting to jaded middle-class lifestyle standards. Truly hardwiring your frugal recalibration doesn't happen overnight. Sure, your body is spectacularly nimble in its adaptability. Your mouth only needs a few days off from additive-inflated fast food flavors to find a tomato and basil salad lip-smackingly delectable. Your muscles grow strong and tenacious enough to dig in a garden for hours after only a few weeks of practice, but you will likely find that your mental habituation to specific behaviors and expectations is a little more stubborn. Be patient and gloat over every little increase in your capacity for pleasure that your recalibrations score for you along the way. Embrace the spirit of self-experimentation. Don't stop until you can wax lyrical about a cucumber.
Yeah, cucumber ain't gonna happen for me. But I think there's some good points there.
I really like several points that they make in that particular chapter. One is, I think, to trade your baseline, right? So most of us are living with a baseline that's like up here where we're inundated with things, whether it be technology or pleasurable things to eat or different things that just become kind of built into the norm. And then what's usually the opposite of the norm is taking a step back from those things, right? So the norm is like all of this input and sensations and tastes and smells and wonderful things. And then the norm is like a more simplistic, or the opposite of that is a more simplistic way of living. And so what they're saying is like to flip the script and to make your norm be like a more simplistic way of living, which can still be really satisfying if you recalibrate your senses, and then inundate it with these really cool things that then have more meaning and more value. Just now when I was taking a little drink of water a minute ago, I was thinking about how you don't even think about taking a drink, right? But when you've just exercised or you've been out in the yard, like working really hard to mow or something, and you take a drink of water after, like it feels so good and it tastes so good. And it's that elevated pleasure sensation that you get from something that could be really ordinary simply because there's conditions that make it seem more spectacular.
Yeah, back when you were training for marathons, you used to love to get home and have a nice cool glass of water ready for you just to down, if not multiple glasses of water after your training runs. And so I could see that being kind of the same situation there. So what let's kind of discuss what are some different ways that we can practice this, and then maybe our viewers can comment below on ways that they want to maybe try out and do different things. So they mentioned a couple in the book, and maybe we can kind of bring some of those back up. But, one of them that I think a lot of people get engrossed in right now is technologies and their cell phones. So, what would that look like in a cell phone for you?
Well, I recently just did a media fast, which was actually for a different reason than frugality and recalibrating my senses. As part of an online course that I'm taking, we were looking at media and how it represents women, and specifically the bodies of women in different platforms. And so I, for about a week, didn't do anything related to media. So I was still reading books, and I was still using my phone to text or message others, but I wasn't consuming shows. I wasn't looking at articles. I wasn't going on social media. And I really found that sort of recalibrated my senses. It's so common if you're sitting somewhere and maybe you're experiencing the slightest bit of boredom because you're waiting for something, or you're in line, or you just are sitting down for a minute to have a meal. And instead of focusing on the thing that's actually happening, it's so easy for us just to pick up our phones, mindlessly scroll through social media, or watch something. So I think for me, even though the point of that media fast was for something kind of different, I did feel refreshed afterwards to know that I could be present in the experience that I was having, rather than also be multitasking and being in the world of my cell phone.
Sure. Do you think when you came back from that fast, you saw media differently at all, or you think it just helped you kind of stop letting the media kind of drive your thought processes?
Yeah, I think after the fast, I wasn't as quick to pick up my phone when I was in those situations where I was feeling bored or looking for something to do. So if I was eating, I was just paying attention to the food that I was eating, which inherently makes it taste better and is more satisfying, and you're able to pay attention to your hunger and fullness cues. And so I don't feel like I was as quick to just pick up my phone and look for something to look at or occupy my time. I could really focus on the physical presence of being in my body. So again, it was kind of a way of bringing you back to that mindfulness component that we see in this book.
Great.
What do you think about some of that when it comes to technology?
Yeah, I think, technology for me is kind of the main entertainment source. And I've never really done something like that, so might be something interesting to try. Maybe, a short 24-hour, 48-hour. I think we do often do that when we go out to our cabin, because we don't have internet out there, and we don't have very good cell service. So we're kind of forced into that in some ways. But I still end up finding my way down to the beach and connecting back up that way. So I can't really say that I've officially tried it for longer periods than maybe a few hours at a time, but it might be something interesting to try out. So I think another one maybe we could try out, or people could try out, would be the food one. Maybe take 1 week and just live off of the food left in the pantry. Maybe it's not the items that you would normally reach for. It's not going to be the best flavorful foods, but it's going to use up some of those resources that are either going to go bad and we're going to throw away, or it's going to drive a different, meal out of something. And we're going to find different ways to use some of that stuff up. And then you can be excited and get to grocery shop and know that you've just saved some money that last week. And so you can maybe spend a little bit on some of the items that you really find intriguing, and maybe gives you some different flavor palettes to think about. So what
I
about
find
something
that
like
when it comes to the food component, I often feel like I'm in this sort of lean enjoyment, lean staged quite a bit because of my veganism. So here where we live, there aren't a lot of restaurants that have really good vegan food right around where we live. So when you and I go out, I can usually find something to eat, and occasionally, depending on the restaurant that we go to, I really enjoy it. But when we go to Seattle and we go to a specifically vegan restaurant in Seattle, like, it is so pleasurable to sit down and be able to order anything I want off of the menu. I usually order more than I can actually eat, and then we can take some of it home. But the food tastes so good, and it's so, like, well prepared. And so I think that puts me into this, what they're explaining here, without me even doing any work. But I do think you could replicate that even if there are really good restaurants that you can eat at that are close to you, just by doing what you were saying. Maybe having a week where you're not going to go out, or even 2 weeks. Maybe you're not going to spend a bunch of money and you're just going to eat what you have. And then at the end, you celebrate by going to a restaurant that you really enjoy and sitting down and, like, really focusing on the experience. I think so many times when we eat, we aren't even thinking about what we're doing or what we're eating or the flavors that are in our mouths. And so just paying attention and mindfully eating, I think, is really enjoyable. I mean, food is supposed to be pleasurable, right? And I think so many of us just go through eating mindlessly. And so if you can bring back that intention to really enjoy your food, it can recalibrate your senses as well.
Yeah. So what are some ways that maybe you guys have done similar things like this that maybe we can try out, and ways that you've kind of recalibrated your senses and kind of reset things to make yourself enjoy things even more? I'm not really looking to, like, restrict us from, things or stuff like that, but do it in an effort of being able to enjoy those things more. So, diets will often say, oh, you can't eat this thing or that thing. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm more looking for what can we do to make the things that we maybe just consume without realizing that much more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. So we'd love to hear what your ideas are and ways that maybe we can try out something new and enjoy. We're always loving to experiment with different ways to deal with things. So Let us know what you think. So anything else you want to mention on this?
I think they had one little story section. Let me look at it real quick.
All right, let's finish with story time.
Everything's amazing. Nobody's happy. Everybody on every plane should just constantly be going, oh my God, wow, you're flying. You're sitting in a chair in the sky, but it doesn't go back a lot and it smells really. Here's the thing people say, there's delays on flights. Delays, really? New York to California in 5 hours. That used to take 30 years to do that, and a bunch of you would die on the way there and have a baby. You'd be with a whole different group of people by the time you got there. Now you watch a movie, you take a dump, and you're home. Louis C.K. One of your authors was on a plane recently where a few passengers were very excited about being on a chair in the sky. They were children. When they first started yelling, "We're going off the ground! We're really flying! We're going inside a cloud!" Other passengers shifted about their seats, unsure whether to be irritated or not. Then they started smiling and craning their necks to look out the window a little and felt briefly delighted and flabbergasted by the whole situation. I think that's a really good illustration of recalibrating your senses. Yeah. I mean, so many of us do things every day that are truly miraculous. I mean, getting in a car and being able to drive somewhere that's 20 or 30 miles away in half an hour is phenomenal, because it would take you almost a whole day to walk there yourself, and maybe you couldn't even do that because 20 to 30 miles is a lot of miles. So I think just recognizing the amazement in the things that we so often take for granted is sort of the point of that chapter.
All right, let's go find something this week to be amazed about and comment down below on what that's going to be for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.